Do you have people in your life that are chronically late? That is the question we're pondering today on the Art of Lifing with Keka. Okay, so if you know me, you are going to know that I am one of those people that tend to be chronically late. It's a part of myself that actually I find very frustrating personally. And I don't know what it is about habits that are hard to break, but it is something that I am constantly trying to get better at. My typical lateness is usually about maybe 5 or 10 minutes late, but I must admit that for my wedding 21 years ago, I was about an hour late. If my husband heard me, he'd probably say 2, but my story is 1. So we're going to stick to that for now. But I wanted to talk about this idea of being late because it is something that in Western culture we often talk about as a sign of disrespect. If somebody is late to a meeting, you're disrespecting my time. I'm sitting here and waiting for you. And it's considered such a negative thing. But if you come from a lot of different Eastern countries, people are a lot more laid back in that case in some ways. So growing up in an Indian culture, we used to joke about the fact that things were always on Eastern Standard Time, or Indian Standard Time rather, not Eastern, that everything was on Indian Standard Time. And so much so to the point that where our Indian community would put together a theater, for example, and people would be coming from the community to watch that theater, if the show was supposed to start at 7, it never actually started until at least 8:30 or 9. Any Indian wedding that you go to, chances are it's not going to start on time. It's going to start later. So this got me thinking about the idea of disrespect, because the one thing that I never ever want to do when I'm meeting with somebody and I happen to be running late is I never want to be disrespecting somebody's time. And that is the way that we perceive being late. So I started to ask myself this question one day when I had back-to-back meetings, and I had enough time in between to go from one meeting to another. And throughout the course of the day, I was literally late for every single meeting I had. And there was no reason for it because I literally had nothing to do in between. I was moving from one place to another. And I thought, why is it that today of all days, when I had lots of time in between and I was doing nothing else to distract me, why have I been late for every single meeting? And when I looked back at the day, you know what I realized? Is that I have a really difficult time when we are in the middle of a meeting and in the middle of a conversation to stop a conversation short and say, I'm sorry, I have to stop you mid-conversation because if I don't stop it now, I'm going to be late for my next meeting. Which in Western cultures, especially in our business culture, is very much a norm. There's nothing wrong with that. Nobody sees it as bad. But I have been raised in a way to really value the relationships we have with each other. And that when I am talking to somebody in front of them and they're in mid-conversation, and I've already committed the time to finish that conversation with them, I have a really hard time leaving and breaking that through. And that day when I was late for every single meeting, it was literally because as we would be wrapping up a conversation, something would come up and the person in front of me would start to talk and I couldn't break that conversation down. And I thought, so how do I fix this? Am I the only one here doing this? Am I the only one experiencing this? So I'm going to share a little story where I went with a really dear friend of mine, Lisa Ferguson, on a trip to Colombia. We went to Bogota and then to Tuchin, a small little town in Colombia, where we worked with the local artisans there on some programming on an incredible initiative called Dream to Dream that was founded by Lisa Ferguson. So we went to Bogota on a fact-finding mission, and for the 7 days that we were there, I think we had meetings booked for 5 of them, where we had quite a few back-to-back meetings. And no word of a lie, every single meeting we went to literally started an hour late. We were supposed to meet this one woman at a retail store and we got there at 3 when the meeting was supposed to start. She didn't come till after 4 o'clock. So we were trying to keep ourselves busy in the retail store. Lisa at one point was like, should we just leave? We ended up staying, but literally every business meeting started an hour after it was supposed to. But here's the thing. Nobody there was bothered by it. Nobody talked about being disrespectful of time. Even though you could send a quick text and say, hey, I'm running late, I'm going to be there, there was no text. The cultural norm was such that when somebody is in front of you having that conversation, it's considered more rude to break up that conversation that moment to keep on schedule. And it's better for us to finish those meetings. And so even for us, if we had a meeting scheduled from, let's say, 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, when we finished at 5 and we kept going with the conversation, nobody stopped us. Then we'd walk out of the office and see other people waiting for their next meeting. Nobody stopped us. So this just makes me think about the fact that our values sometimes in different cultural sets can be placed in different areas. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to make excuses for being late. I certainly want to improve that part of myself, most definitely. But I do think it's worth sometimes having that conversation to see how the reasons behind some actions in one culture might be different than the reasons behind another culture. And so at the end of the day, is it more important for us to be a slave to the time that we have and the clock and keeping to that? Or is it more important for us to value the time we have with the person in front of us in the moment that we have it? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think it's probably a combination of both at the end of the day, but it is worth thinking about. I'm going to leave you with one final thought, and this is just because I think we can't take life too seriously. I said to my husband that if I am to leave this earth before him, when he's making my funeral arrangements, I have one request for him. And that is just to be able to give all my friends and family a last laugh. I want him to strategically and purposefully make sure that I arrive late to my own funeral. Maybe just by 5 or 10 minutes, but just to make it late. So could you imagine people sitting at the funeral home? Where is the person who's passed away? Where is Keka? I'm sorry, she's running about 5 minutes late. I feel like that would be the funniest last laugh that I could give to the world on my account. So, do you have a story about being late? Do you have pet peeves that you want to share? Is there a side of this argument that maybe I'm not seeing? Please leave your comments below, and I really want to hear what you have to say and your perspective on this matter. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please like it, and if you know someone who you think would like to see something like this as well, please share the video. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe to my channel. I put out new videos every week on Tuesdays.